Good afternoon, Pokemon trainers, and welcome back to our Bochum Regional Championships. We're right into the depth of it now. We're in our top 4 game. It's a crunch match time. My name is Benjamin Raviotti, and I'm glad to cast with my co-host, Alex Dow. Alex, how are we feeling?
Yeah, not too bad. Super excited. Finally getting down to our final 4 players of our Bochum Regionals tournament for 2023. So this is super, super exciting just to kind of see who will make it one more step further in their quest to become the regional champion.
No, it's so exciting. One of these players could be our next regional champion. You know, one of these players, both of these players are going to be thinking, you know, okay, top 4 match first, but then maybe getting to the final, maybe even winning.
Yep, and it's exactly that. We're very fortunate, again, to be showcasing throughout a bit more. Milos is back on our stream, but because we were really, really excited to bring you guys the one, the only Edwin Mesman, who went 9-0 in our day 1 of Swiss, and then continued to be undefeated into day 2 Swiss as well.
It's no mean feat going 9-0. Going 9-0 at day 1, you know, you're a part of a very elite club. You know, we're renowned of being, you know, going 9-0 is a massive achievement in itself, but going undefeated in day 2 is also just as big.
Yeah, it's an incredible sort of feat that he's been able to do now, and we're finally getting a chance to showcase him onto our main stage. You know, Edwin is one of those players who's relatively new to the scene. I think he might have played a bit more previously as well, but generally he's just really come to the fore right now. You know, he's done super well in the team challenge, where I think we might have mentioned before, where he has actually won the team challenge as part of a team within the Netherlands. Actually came close to winning it twice, which again is something super cool to have on your Pokemon CV. But now he's really bringing it to himself to showcase his abilities on a regional stage.
No, it's a massive achievement, like you said, you know, and one of our newer players, and it's like we said back on our little piece earlier back on the couch, it's these players who are building their stories, building the beginnings of this Pokemon playing CV, you know. But Edwin will be thinking, you know, this is a massive achievement in itself, but I've got an opportunity here. You know, I'm in the top 4. This is big stuff.
Yeah, there is more prize money on the line. There are more booster boxes available, more CP available for that road to Yokohama and that World Championship qualification, as we see both players just setting up now. Prizes being laid out, and Milos there just having to have a bit of a awkward position with those prizes.
You can't really ignore the 2 Archeops. The 2 Archeops in the bin isn't great. You know, you love to start them in the hand, being able to discard them quickly, or even using, you know, one of the plethora of ball searching abilities in the deck. But, you know, that isn't going to be available to him, you know, easily if you've already prized 2 of your Archeops.
No, absolutely not. And we do see the 2 different arts of the Archeops there, as well as Milos has identified immediately to go for that Vikavolt V onto the bench with the speed energy as well for additional draw power, and actually being able to just start finding and going through his deck with that Evo Incense. Now beginning to identify that potentially he might have a bit of a harder time to get those Archeops into the discard.
Yeah, I'm kind of banging my head here because he didn't get it out at once in the last game, but you know, he's kind of dropped this down straight away in this first game before he's done anything else. But you know, let's not ignore this. Edwin started Pumpkaboo. We've seen this in the previous game and how detrimental it can be. So you know, Milos is going, well, you know, fantastic for me. You know, you've started Pumpkaboo. I've started my main attacker.
Yeah, this is ideal for Milos, and especially because he's going first as well. We know how vital and advantageous it is to be able to do so. Edwin staring down that Lugia and that lightning attacker on Milos' side of the board, and having to just sit with that very heavy Pumpkaboo in the active spot, requiring 2 energies just to even get out to the active there as well. The good thing is, outside of the sort of Marnie being a massive disruptive card in this kind of matchup, there's no path that's going to come down as well, which Pumpkaboo's generally there for. Yeah,
Pumpkin Pit, such an important ability in Lugia. You know, that little boy, he may be heavy, but he's so useful, you know, getting rid of the path to the peaks, like you say. But, you know, fortunately for him, there's not going to be any path to the peaks in this matchup. But, you know, like we saw in the last game, Milos does play that copy of Collapse Stadium, so it'll be interesting to see if that comes into play.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good cards in Milos' hands. There's multiple ball outs. He just used an Ultra Ball there to grab that Lugia V-Star into his hand. that must mean he's very sort of set with the Archeops already in the discards from perhaps that Ultra Ball that we just saw. Does have a quick ball in hand as well, so if he did need one of those extra Archeops pieces, he could have grabbed it through there, but because he's gone for that Lugia V-Star, it just gives me the impression that he doesn't actually need it at all. And that hand seems very strong as we pass over to Edwin, as we see him for the first time on stream this weekend, despite being completely undefeated.
Yeah, we see here as well, there's a plethora of Ball Search in his hand as well. So, it's so much utility in this Lugia deck. There's so much Ball Search. 4 copies of Ultra Ball, 4 copies of Quick Ball, 4 Evolution Incense. It just makes sense in a deck like this. Of course, the priority is to get the Archeops in the bin. But Edwin just saying, I don't need to get any to use my Ball Search to search any Archeops. I'm just going to straight start them.
Yeah, huge,
huge, absolutely huge.
As he now goes through his deck to also just identify what actually is available to himself. Nothing too crazy in the prizes. Does have one of the Lugia V-Stars, which might make it a little bit more difficult, but because he's not expending anything like those Evo Incense on those Archeops, he has those opportunities to use those later to grab that V-Star when he does require it. So Edwin still in not an awful position, may look to try and perhaps get double Lugia down.
Yeah.
Typically what happens when you do go second is you have to protect that opportunity to use Summoning Star as soon as possible, and also identifies he just wants to kind of disrupt Milosh's hand because he has grabbed that Lugia V-Star with that Ultra Ball earlier, so has grabbed that Marnie to a hand as well.
Yeah, we see this commonly going second as a Lugia player in the mirror. You think, I can't get as an explosive start as you just as you start ending your second turn. So, I'm just going to try and disrupt you here. I'm going to go for the Marnie. I'm going to make yourself make my opponent get what they need a little bit more, make them use more resources, ask him the question, did you find what you need?
Yeah, definitely. I'm just having a little look at some of these lists here. When I look at Edwin's list, it seems to be a little bit maybe less teched out in a number of ways. Does obviously have the Dunsparce and the Manaphy in his list, but generally there's nothing too crazy. It's pretty much as straightforward as you can potentially get, or what you typically see of Lugia lists, in comparison to what we've seen with Milosh multiple times now, able to use something like that Vikavolt V to really push himself in a position, in a better position, I should say.
And we've said this all weekend, it's diversity of deck choices and building. We've had a couple of segments this weekend with Robin, and we asked him the question, how do you test with him for a meta that, you're going to be seeing a lot of little techs here or there? And, his answer was, well, I just go for what's consistent. I'm going to go for, a deck that has the best matchups with the best decks in format. And that's exactly what Edwin's done here, in comparison to maybe some of the lists that we've seen this weekend.
Yeah, and this is why it's kind of coming up trumps for Edwin right now. You can see just under his name, he has gone 12-0-3 for this weekend. Now looking to try and push himself into that final, and then hopefully looking to try and grab one of those champions medals that we all want as whenever we participate in some of these tournaments. And we do see there, it looks like he's just passed over to Milosh, leaving that Pumpkaboo in the active spot. He doesn't really want it anywhere else right now. He's got his 2 Lugias and has disrupted as much as he could.
Yeah, passing it over to Milosh now, and he would have been Marnied, so he's only down to 5 cards, but we do see the Evolution Incense here. You can imagine going for the Lugia V-Star. Of course, going first, he did have the advantage of getting those Archeops in the bin as early as possible. But it's going back to the game that we had earlier. It's unfortunate because he's going to be knocking out the Pumpkaboo, but really he wants to be taking those 2 prizes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And we see that instant flip of the V-Star where it says use there on that bit of cardboard, not quite the Pokemon type. As a Primal Turbo has been activated here from Milosh as he looks to try and find a way to potentially maybe target down one of those 3 Pokemon on Edwin's side, and that's just sitting there pretty on the bench right now. Because that Pumpkaboo, as you already mentioned, it's kind of helpful for Edwin right now as a bit of a wall.
Yeah.
Kind of protecting those Lugias, protecting that Luminion just for the moment, unless Milosh is able to find a way around it.
Yeah, it's an effective way. If you're going to put up the Pumpkaboo, he didn't do it voluntarily, of course. It's a very involuntary start. So, but this could be to the advantage to Edwin, like we said, and key to this matchup again is the use of the single prize attackers. We know that Lugius plays the Radiant Charizard, the Raikou, the amazing Ray of Altor. It's all about how efficiently can you use these attackers.
And there it is. There's the announcement of the attack, over KOing the Pumpkaboo.
Just a bit.
Just a little bit, yeah, huge. But yeah, over KOing the Pumpkaboo and just giving Edwin an opportunity here to retaliate onto this Lugia V-Star. Of course, still needs a few more pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Still will need his own Lugia V-Star to be able to use that Summoning Star ability and see if he can retaliate in a way where he's taking more prizes and goes ahead in the actual race itself. So really important turn here. Does have the Lugia V-Star already there in the active spot. He's just analyzing, it looks like, just how best he can navigate this turn.
Yeah, sure. So we know he has the 2 Archeops in the bin. He does have two prizes on the board. I'm saying 2 a lot. Two prizes. A bit of a tongue twister there. So, he's going to be evolving into the V-Star, so protecting himself from an easy knockout on the V from Milosh. So, we know that he also has the Research in hand, so we could be seeing quite an explosive turn here. But he's going to be looking to knock out this V-Star. He's looking to be retaliating and getting ahead of the prize race here.
Yeah, and he's instantly used his V-Star ability as well, looking to try and retaliate with that Primal Turbo, accelerating that energy. Such a powerful ability to really accelerate those energies onto a plethora of different attackers, a rainbow version of attackers, as it were, as you already mentioned, those single prizes. So it's really just interesting how Edwin's going to use his own Pokemon or his own attackers. He still does have 1 bench space as well if he chooses to try and find a way to attack with an alternative Pokemon. But looks like he's going for the jugular. He's going for all
ginormous.
of it. Huge. Absolutely huge.
So, with the extra 60 damage in addition to the Tempest Dive, base damage of 220, he's going to be able to take the knockout on the Lugia. But not only that, he's going to be utilizing the V-Gun energy. Now he's saying, my Lugia's 310, effectively, negating 30 damage from V Pokemon. Are you able to do something about this, And this is great sequencing. This is what we like to see from some of our top players. Choosing to do the Primal Turbo before the research to prevent the likelihood of drawing into those energies.
Yeah, that's exactly that, Ben. It's great to see. His next step, I believe, will be trying to get down that Dunsparce.
Yes.
What's still staring him down on the bench is that Vikavolt V. If there's a way, of course, to be able to prevent the easy return knockout, that's what he's got to focus on right now. He has researched his hand. I don't know how pretty it was looking, really beyond just his turn right now. Of course, if it does retaliate, he does have a Lugia V-Star ready to go as well, potentially. But, if he just gets that Dunsparce down, he really does put himself in such a favorable position, unable to, and just takes the massive KO on Milosh's Lugia V-Star itself.
Yeah, so sure, I would have loved to have seen a Dunsparce down there from Edwin, but unfortunately not. It's making that super zap cannon very super and very zappy. Going to be doing a massive, I believe, 400 damage and taking out that Lugia.
Yeah, it's a super amount of damage. That's, again, he's already had a couple of instances where he's over KOing a Pokemon. That Super Zap Cannon dealing 190 damage, having to discard 2 energies, of course, but 2 lightning and the colorless as a attack cost. But then allowing it to overreach for that 310, quote-unquote, HP Lugia V-Star on Edwin's side of the board. So Edwin, despite going second, despite having gone a prize down first as well, looks to be in a really good commanding position at the moment. But we've seen Pokemon swings and roundabouts happen all the time. And Milosh will be looking for a way to deal with this without having to potentially give up 2 prizes as well. But at the same time, he knows this has to go down this turn.
Yeah, we see here the attachment to the Vikavolt. Of course, not doing the 200 damage, sorry, he's doing the 190. But with our Zapdos, he would have been doing 200. But here we see Milosh just going through his deck. And this is a position we see a lot of Lugia players in. He's got the 1 attacker out, he's got the 2 Archeops on bench. How is he going to prepare himself for the next turn? We know it's most likely that Edwin's going to be knocking out this Vikavolt on his turn. So, how does Milosh going to be able to retaliate in the future turns? And we know the great players, they see forward. They map this game out. You know, they think about turns way ahead of the current.
Yeah, and it's super important there. We do see the super Zap Cannon discarding those 2 lightning energies attached to that Vikavolt, instantly return KOing, bringing him down to 3 prizes remaining, and Edwin now with a possibility to go down to just a 2. Really important turn here because Edwin will be able to retaliate onto this Vikavolt. With that choice belt also attached, it's doing plenty of damage available to be able to then push himself 1 step closer to taking game 1.
Yeah, and we see here, you know, obviously Milos ahead of the prize race. He's only on the 3 prizes left, whereas Edwin on the 4. And this is where the turns start becoming more orientated around the single prizes. You know, and Milos, as I said there, you know, preparing for next turn, has the free retreat now, essentially, with the manual attachment to the Archeops, forgiving that it is going to be a powerful energy, but still in preparation. And, you know, it's going to be interesting to see how this kind of goes forward with the single prizes, the Radiant Charizards, the Yveltals, the Raikus, you know?
Yeah, exactly that. And I think Edwin will probably be eyeing up just setting up an additional sort of heavy attacker, something that can do sort of stretching for more damage as well. You mentioned the Radiant Charizard, which is such a powerful card to having these kinds of decks, kind of rainbow decks as it were. As Edwin is now just kind of looking to try and thin out his deck of less useful cards for the time being, because obviously he still has a few of those Archeops in his deck right now, which won't really be playing a part now that he already has his 2 from the Summoning Star ability. So just getting out of the deck so he's not going to draw into them anytime soon. Even if he gets money, they get put to the bottom. So it's just tinkering with a few percentages as we see our players potentially just having a little look.
Potential sleeve issue there.
Yeah, absolutely fine, because it's been caught. And just make sure that, you know, the integrity of the game. Oh, of course, there you go. It's just a proxy.
It's a proxy.
Yeah.
We'll just get a confirmation of what that... Oh, the proxy is the Radiant Charizard.
Yep.
Okay. So, as I said there, you know, the single prizes are going to finally come out to play.
Or water energy, that is a single prize.
Judge? Yeah, so
very clarified, yes. Again, it is that proxy for that Radiant Charizard. That's why Edwin has pulled it out of the deck for everyone to, well, for his opponent to see as well, despite that wonderful text there to showcase exactly what it is. Preparing it as well with an additional energy. Looks like a capture attached to it for the time being. Here's the second Primal Turbo. Again, just kind of managing those resources because it's so important, particularly when you're playing with a finite amount. You're not getting any of them back after all. It's just one of those things you have to keep track of. And sometimes, actually more often than not, you're keeping track of your opponent's energy count as well.
And he's maybe opting to use the Radiant Charizard now. You know, he's using the capture energy, he's attaching the capture energy to it. We know that it can attack for 1 more energy. It has to be a fire, of course, but we know it can attack with that Excited Heart ability. So it'll be interesting to see if he could... Well, he's going to be manually retreating here.
There you go. There's the fire energy with the Aurora attached, with the Archeops discarded. Yeah, the DTE will allow the retreat, the pay manual retreat cost of the Lugia V-Star, and it's just going to be start swinging with the 1 prizer. So this is, again, another great turn by Edwin in terms of being able to just completely swing it even more in his favor at this point, because Combustion Blast will do 250 damage. Won't be able to attack next turn.
No, it's a massive 250, as you've alluded to there. I don't believe there's any switch outs in Edwin's deck, so, you know, if he's going to be attacking next turn, he will have to manually retreat again from the Charizard. 3 retreat cost isn't, you know, it isn't cheap.
No, not at all. And it's one of those awkward scenarios where Milos, if he aims to try and take down a different Pokemon to the Charizard, that Charizard can come back in and just swing in again, of course, if a gusting option is used. So Milos will most likely look to try and force a single prize attacker to take out the Charizard. Still leaves him with 2. That Luminion is still available there as well, although does have that special attack that allows it to jump back into the deck. So I'll be really interested to see which direction Milos takes this in, because he will at some point with his prize mapping have to take out 1 single prizer and a 2 prizer V Pokemon to be able to take this game, whereas he could try and force just having single prizes out on the board, and Edwin won't really have a chance to do much else.
I think I'd like to seen the knockout with the Archeops here, just because he can go into a checkmate situation by just having the one Primal Turbo out with the one Yveltal out, taking a knockout on the Radiant Charizard, and then getting ready for next turn to potentially take the knockout on the Luminion. But of course, the Luminion won't be able to knock out the Archeops.
Yeah, no, exactly that. It's definitely a line of play that is something that could have been considered because this is a heavy. He's actually gone for the Lugia V-Star here.
Wow.
So this is kind of almost forcing the hand in a similar vein.
Yeah.
Because right now Edwin would have to still put up something to take out this Yveltal, otherwise it can just, again, use that amazing rare attack again, just taking out another Pokemon, and anything is now a target on Edwin's side of the board. And, you know, even if it gets taken out by this Lumion, who or what does it bounce into?
Yeah, it's a threat that has to be taken care of. You know, it's putting Milosh in a checkmate situation by where, you know, he's only on one prize. So, you know, he can take a knockout. There's multiple Pokemon on the board that he can be able to take a knockout on, regardless of how Edwin plays around this.
Yeah, it's really, really well played by Milosh there to target down the Lugia V-Star, because it's a massive HP Pokemon. You know, you wouldn't have wanted to see the Luminion potentially bounce into the Lugia V-Star, because then it's like a big tanky Pokemon to try and go through. Whilst Edwin here is currently just still using the Luminion to attack, which is the right way to go about this right now. And potentially with that heat energy, increasing the HP available to that Charizard as well. Fantastic. Is exactly what we kind of want to see. He's going to bounce into that Charizard, take the knockout on this Yveltal, and then we'll see how Milosh can deal with whatever's left in the active spot.
No, yeah, Edwin's thinking, how do I best prevent Milosh being able to take a knockout next turn? And this is exactly what he's doing here. He's attaching that heat energy to the Radiant Charizard, increasing its health, and he's most probably going to be retreating into the Radiant Charizard with the Aqua Return after the Aqua Return attack. So yeah, great sequencing, great play.
Yeah, great play, and it's just then forcing Milosh into what you have to work out what's currently in Milosh's hand. Edwin may be looking to try and perhaps disrupt where possible as well, with maybe like a Marnie or any other possible play to try and just limit the chances of Milosh, but he does just go for the Aqua Return, takes the KO, will go down to one prize as well, and it's on Milosh right now to find a route to victory.
So, you know, although he's got no energy on board to retreat with, we know that he's got attackers in his deck that can utilize just only one energy to attack. He's got his own Radiant Charizard he can attack with. So I believe that that's probably going to be the priority attacker here.
Yeah, so we'll have a little look for you guys. There's the quick ball. He's actually playing this quite quickly. He must have already in his mind exactly the direction that he's going to take this in. It's just double checking. There's the Radiant Charizard. Does just need to make sure there's energies both in hand and in the deck for the Primal Turbo as well, just to confirm there's Primal Turbo number one just to retreat into.
Just
and it looks like that's more than enough to take game one by taking the KO on the opposing Radiant Charizard. And game one goes to Milosh in the semi-finals.
Fantastic game. You know, we spoke about how taking knockout on Pumpkaboo isn't the best, but, you know, it turned out to be that taking a single prize early had actually won him the game. You know, taking the knockout on the Pumpkaboo, not always going to be attractive to a player. You know, you're always going to want to be taking the maximum prizes as quickly as possible, but it turns out in a matchup where we're going to be orientating in the late game around single prizes, it actually came up trumps.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of those things where Edwin had to put down 3 Vs onto the bench as well, so he had to kind of utilize a maneuver around those as well. Milosh didn't have to use something like a Luminion on the bench, so it was never sitting there. He never had to use Aqua Return to send it back into the deck to protect it. But because there was a turn, I wouldn't say necessarily wasted to have to do that, but just because there were so many targets on Edwin's side of the board, it just meant that Milosh had a clearer route to taking 6 prizes than we perhaps initially thought so, just by having to take that initial Pumpkaboo. Yeah,
and you know, let's talk about that amazing rare Yveltal. Sorry, I could barely get my words right after that game. No, but let's talk about that Yveltal. You know, whenever I see this on stream, it just pops off. It's just such an amazing attack, amazing destruction. Of course, just going, I'm not going to do any damage. I'm just knocking you out. Get in that discard. I'm just going to take those prizes. And of course, even though with the massive attack cost, with a company with Primal Turbo, it's always an active option. And it's always active to the Lugia players to take a surprise knockout. And it's just such a great option for these Lugia players.
Yeah, and it's one of those cards because of the kind of rainbow energies that they play with the Auroras and the additional energies that they play as well, like the speed energy and the heat energy. They have access to a number of different attackers. So often you don't find yourself being able to use something like the Amazing Rare Raikou as well as the Amazing Rare Yveltal. You have to kind of pick and choose your moments. And that's where, we see top level players just really identifying which one to go for and the direction that they go down, because once they choose one, they have to commit.
Yeah, they have to.
There's no way back at that point. It's the game plan completely changes. As we go back to our players now who have been setting up for game 2, Edwin will be looking to go first and try and get an equally as good a setup that Miloš was able to do in game 1 as well, as see both players lay out their prizes. Again, nothing too crazy. That Mana Fee being prized in the top. The double choice belt.
The double choice belt could come into
interesting.
Play. So it is not going to stop Edwin being able to take a knockout on a Lugia V-Star with Raikou. So that might come into play. But nothing too detrimental, I would say. Maybe the Lumineon and Archeops might hurt the consistency slightly. But fortunately for both players, not too bad. Let's be honest with ourselves. There's no perfect prizes.
No, there's never a perfect prize, and there's never really kind of something you can wish for. It's all sometimes just comes down to that variance that I've mentioned before. You can be as skilled as a player as possible, but sometimes variance just isn't quite on your side. Edwin does start the Amazing Rare Yveltal that you've mentioned, and just gave a little bit of analysis on there as well. Probably not the most ideal starter. You're never really going to find a way to retreat it. It's, again, another big, beefy retreat cost. Yeah. And if it's just facing up against a single prize, you don't really want to waste all that 5 energies that you need to attach it to get any real value in the prize race. So it can be a bit of an awkward spot, but Edwin does have the Lugia in hand. He's double checking what is prized right now, just kind of making sure that Archeops are available to him. Just the one prize is not too much of a problem. Does target down the Archeops and is likely to find a way to, discard one already to begin with.
And interesting you bring up, the Yveltal starting it, not optimal. But, it's going to be an interesting question to ask Edwin. Do you prioritize, if I'm going to be attaching double colorless to this Yveltal, I may as well be maybe attacking with it. It's not, as we know, it's not a terrible attacker. If you're going to be using the majority of your resources on it, you will be wanting to probably take 2 prizes, though. So, let's see how Edwin navigates this.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, there's not another sort of DTE prize, so he could potentially just get the DTE on it, at least threaten it as an option. The only thing he will consider is that hopefully he's already checked his prizes or through his deck searches. He does have 1 Aurora in the prizes as well. Yeah. So again, limiting those options available to him in terms of what attackers he might use in this matchup. So there's the capture energy just attached to the Yveltal right now. Grabs an Oranguru, maybe an important card in his hand that he wants to protect if he hits something like the research already in hand as well. Yeah,
the Primal Wisdom, such a great ability, and I think it's really actually underestimated. The Primal Turbo ability, accompanied with these aggressive cards like Professor's Research, gives players the availability to, or the opportunity, I might add, to save a card. Yeah. Oh, this card in my hand is really important. Let's put it back on the top of my deck. I don't want to discard this card. And also, it has that, in Lugia, it has that, let's save an energy. Or let's put an energy back into my deck to use Primal Turbo. It has that double-edged sword.
Yeah, and on top of that as well, we've seen other players use it to full effect when they're facing up against decks that utilize Marnie a lot as well. So you're protecting your next card just by putting it to the top of the deck. Maybe you can put a research to the top of the deck so that if you do get Marnied, you have the research for the next turn. You have outs for your next turn. The other really cool thing about Oranguru is once you put it to the top of the deck, maybe then you use Primal Turbo, not just to get the energies back out, but maybe shuffle that card back into the deck because you don't want it next turn perhaps. You want to see a new card. So there's lots of little utility that you can get out of it, as we do see Edwin pass over to Miloš, and Miloš kicks things off with his own Ultra Ball and problem price trekking. to find out that, yeah, he's got a few energies prized, but other than that, nothing too crazy.
Imagine he's starting to build up his board state by benching a Lugia V, getting ready for his next turn to use Summoning Star. And as we see here, prize checking as the best players do, and as we said in the previous game, you know, these players do have additional time in their top 8 matches and subsequently top 4 and their finals. So, you know, a little bit more time given to players to think through their matchup a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. And as we've always mentioned, there's a little bit of a sort of unwritten player rule between us to allow the first search to just be that little bit longer to take in that kind of level of information. But subsequent sort of searches do tend to be a little bit quicker as well, because you know what you tend to be going for. You know your lines of play. You know, just for example, that Evo Incense, look how quick that was. Despite having, you know, a rough guide of a certain number of seconds to actually make that action and that play. So it's just one of these things where Milosh going second has got to try and figure out how could he do slightly better than Edwin, because Edwin went second, still kept it really close and still pushed Milosh all the way, but Milosh went first and won. So he's currently on the back foot because he won't be getting that Lugia Summoning Star first.
No, so he did pop down the Lumenion there, so using the Luminous Sign ability, we'll be able to get a supporter from the deck. It'll be interesting to see whether he gets a Marnie or a Professor's Research. We know that Research is going to be more aggressive as an option than Marnie. However, Marnie, usually a popular choice with these Lugia players going second.
Yeah, it's just we couldn't quite see exactly what he pulled out, but he did shuffle his deck. So just go for just going for the pure consistency where he can. Does have that pivot option on the Manaphy as well. Should another alternative attacker be KO'd instead of that Manaphy, so we'll have a pivot option. I'm not too sure if he's drawn into another Lugia, which could be a little bit of a worrying sign. He may have drawn into a Ball Search, in fact, which is the biggest concern here. And there goes. He wants to keep that Manaphy alive, so does send up the Radiant Charizard as a bit of a tribute.
Yes, but it's not a great sacrificial lamb, Radiant Charizard. It's an attacker that is extremely useful in this matchup. He doesn't want to really see this being knocked out. But of course, it is asking the question of Edwin, look, are you going to use that Yveltal or not? Come on, let me know.
Yeah, will you want to use all of those energies, and how much value are you really getting at that point if you're trading 5 energies or 4 energy attachments in reality up against just my lonely single prize Charizard? But at the same time, Milosh only has that one Lugia V on the bench. That has to be, in Edwin's mind, the biggest target that he needs to try and get into the active spot. Yeah,
in an ideal world, he'll be navigating his way through to a boss play on the lone Lugia V on the bench.
Oh, hits the Lugia V-Star from the Oranguru. There's nice. The Luminion, because that was in his hand. He's been holding it for this turn. What does he target here? Does that look like a research?
Yeah, it does look like a Professor's Research. We'll just get confirmation on that. Oh, just a drop of a card there.
Flying cards.
Now, if he did have energy in hand, that would be live. That play of boss into the Lugia V, but it might not be on. We'll just confirm what's in hand there.
The way it's shuffling up kind of gives me an idea that probably is going to be a research. Just continue setting up the board first. Doesn't maybe not quite have the full Archeops currently available in the discard. But, you know, taking out the Radiant Charizard, if possible, and it seems very likely, will be sort of pretty key as well, because then it reduces what single prizes are able to deal heavy damage back onto Edwin's side of the board. So there is the research, does discard 1 additional Archeops and also a Lugia V-Star, which he doesn't really quite need. Does have an Evo Incense and an Aurora Energy, so there's a few options there to be able to get another Archeops if he needed to do so, but does have it already. So Summoning Star comes down,
there you go.
And now to see which attacker he's going to really be using.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, it's important when they're bench space. He wasn't able to bench any more Pokemon there. Smart play by Edwin, you know, didn't bench anymore, so he can utilize that Summoning Star as much as possible. So here we'll see the first Summoning Star come into effect. The Primal Turbo come into effect. And interesting to note, if he does want to attack with the Lugia, he is going to be having to use double Primal... a Primal Turbo for 2 double colorless energy and manually attach to the Yveltal for retreat, or vice versa.
Yeah, I wonder who he's going to actually use to attack here, because don't forget that Luminion is a water type and does hit the Radiant Charizard for weakness as well.
Yeah.
Which is kind of another cute
Another
little play
option. Another option,
that the
yeah.
Luminion is available. Does go for that Primal Turbo onto the Lugia
And that's exactly what he's doing,
V-Guard, and it looks like he is trying to maybe just protect that Luminion, maybe put it back into the deck so he can utilize that ability later as well. Will be hitting for 100 damage because it's that 120 from the Aqua return into a double, of course, because of the water weakness on the Charizard. And there's a manual attachment, just a DTE.
Oh, he's thinking about whether it's going to be...
It is a heavy retreat, but you know, it seems like necessary in this scenario. Does still have DT in the deck once he's able to use this attack from the Luminion.
Yeah, sure. So he actually, I think, so after the Aqua return, he will have that 1 DT left in deck. Shuffling that back in. We'll see just an evolution incense there. I imagine he's just going to start thinning his deck towards his future turns, and we'll be seeing the knockout on the Radiant Charizard.
Yeah, does activate the prize race here, sending up the Oranguru as his tribute himself following that attack by that Luminion. Does now have the bench space to utilize alternative attackers or that Luminion V himself. And Milosh is looking to respond with that Luminion. That Lugia V, that single lone Lugia V, has been able to stay alive on the bench, which is the best possible return for Milosh there. Unfortunately, having to sacrifice his Charizard, but at the same time, he does have Lugia ready to go into a V-Star, should he be able to.
Yeah, we can imagine here that Milosh is going to be trying to get that Summoning Star up as soon as possible. We see here an attachment to the Luminion. We can possibly see a return knockout with the Aqua return on Edwin's Oranguru. Interesting here, you know, there's no great sacrifice for these Lugia decks. You know, if they're going to be putting up a single prizer to say, here, have this, there's no great option.
No.
Oranguru, we spoke about how useful it is in this matchup, and it's certainly in the sort of engine of this deck. You know, but unfortunately for Edwin, he's going to be having to sacrifice it.
Yeah, and Milosh there just discarding like a few supporters there. I think there was a Skylar there as well as another Research. So a number of like additional draw cards and power in his deck has been discarded just from that one Research there. But I wonder if he's been able to hit the Lugia V-Star. It doesn't look like he's hit it initially. So we'll need to maybe search it out for maybe an Ultra Ball if that looks like he's picking up 3 cards from his hand, but he hasn't done it instantly yet. There's the Ultra Ball having to discard an energy. You know, we've already mentioned how much of a finite resource they are.
We spoke about how, you know, certain micro decisions make and break these games. You know, we see the Oranguru being sacrificed by Edwin, we saw the Radiant Charizard sacrificed by Milosh, and then we saw the discarding of loads of supporters then by the Research. It's these sort of decisions that will really impact you in the late game. You know, could I have saved that boss? Could I have saved that Serena? I really need that Radiant Charizard in the later turns. And these are the sort of decisions that, you know, will eventually make or break whether you win.
Yeah, and looks like Milosh is targeting using that amazing rare Raikou. So different attacker for this matchup, and if he's able to get it off, but he does have a pivot retreat with the Luminion V, no Manaphy on Edwin's side of the board, does mean he will be able to take a double KO using amazing rare Raikou there, with those energies attached, that Speed Lightning and the 2 Auroras, fulfilling the energy cost for that amazing shot attack, the 120 to the active and 120 to a benched Pokemon. And guess what? How much HP does that amazing rare you able to have?
Less than 120. Less than 120. Alex.
There it is. He's swinging this prize race back into his favor right now. You know, he's just taken 2 prizes with a single prizer. Has his own Manaphy down, so it wouldn't be able to happen back to him either. So Edwin just in a bit of a sticky situation right now.
Yeah, and of course the Raikou, you know, with the lightning type, it will have weakness against Lugia, so it is a threat that Edwin will be wanting to get rid of. So, you know, he's umming and ahhing about whether, do I promote the Archeops here, do I promote the Lugia? You know, this is another awkward spot that Lugia players usually find themselves in, is just that board management.
Yeah, exactly that. So does choose to promote the Archeops. Is a pretty good attacker in its own right, of course, is the core part of this deck
Yeah.
through the energy acceleration from that Primal Turbo ability. There's an Ultra Ball discarding another one of those Archeops, which is no longer useful in the deck, to give himself a bit more of an option in terms of an attacker should he wish to go down a different route. But otherwise, the Archeops, it deals 120 damage already. I believe it's Speed Wing.
Yep.
Has 150 HP, so isn't susceptible to a Luminium V Aqua Return. So there's a few different available options there. Looks like Edwin is identifying maybe using his own Luminium to take the knockout on this Raikou. Because again, it's very small in terms of HP. The Aqua Return doing great amount of damage, or enough damage for him to do so. I do recall, I believe there's still quite a few energies in hand, which makes it a little bit of an awkward spot.
Yeah, in order to knock out the Raikou with the Archeops, you would have to attach a powerful and a double turbo. Maybe resources that Edwin doesn't want to get rid of. We know that he had to use one to retreat the Yveltal, so we know that one's down. So maybe he's thinking, oh, I really want to save these resources for later turns.
Yeah, and it's possibly that's the route he's going to go down. I mean, he may still need to, attach an energy to retreat. It might be using one of those less useful energies when it gets to this stage, like the capture energies, for example, to kind of retreat into the Luminium. But then again, saving those Aurora energies, which are kind of clogging up the hand a little, and sort of options like that. And we do see the Radiant Charizard. Again, just a reminder that is just a proxy for the Radiant Charizard from Edwin, because maybe there's just a bit of curvature or slight bit of damage on a Radiant Charizard, which can happen with those types of variants itself.
Yeah,
but we do see the Marnie come down just to kind of disrupt Milosh's side of the board.
Yeah, and just like we alluded to earlier, shuffling those energies back in with Marnie or even the Primate Wisdom ability, it'll give Edwin the opportunity to use those energies that he's just shuffled back into the deck. So great synergy there. And of course, going back to the Lumineon knockout, he won't be able to have the double turbo for knockout. We know the Raikou is 110 HP, so he will have to attach 3 energies, and that's no easy task when you have to retreat something.
Yeah, I wonder if there's going to be a bit of thought from Edwin that maybe he might have wanted to attach an energy from hand initially, because obviously when you Marnie, it goes all the way to the bottom of the deck. Now he only access, if he hasn't hit another energy from the Marnie to 5, he only has access to the 2 Primal Turbos to be able to do anything. So if he wanted to have retreated into the Luminium V, it's not quite as possible right now without having to use the DTE to attack with. And then I don't believe that's enough to actually KO Raikou, because you're only doing 100 instead of 110 HP.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so really, he's shaking his head there, because we understand, how awkward this turn is now. Who do you prioritize? How many resources am I going to be using to just get this single prize knockout?
Yeah, and as you mentioned, is it the way of having to use a powerful energy alongside a DTE to maybe just deal enough, that 120 enough damage to take out this Raikou? There's the Charizard. He looks like he's eyeing up with the DTE. I guess that's plenty of damage that it could be doing, but I guess also wants to make sure he's using that right now to try and utilize as much value as possible. So giving it enough HP as well with that heat energy, and then just saving those Archeops for future turns. Yeah,
so it's definitely going to be knocking out the Raikou, as you said there. Combustion Blast, massive damage. Certainly going to be able to knock out that Raikou. But we see here the double attachment from Primal Turbo, so it gives Edwin the pivot for next turn. So, when the Radiant Charizard is going to be knocked out now, it gives Edwin the opportunity to have a little bit more maneuverability in terms of how he navigates his turn next.
Yeah, and there's the Combustion Blast there by the Charizard, or the Radiant Charizard, is now kind of facing up against that Luminion V, able to Aqua Return and KO it with and one of those Aurora energies and a DTE at the minimum. Asmiroth plays out his hands, looking to kind of just grab and thin out some of those less useful cards out of his deck with that Evo Incense as well. Kind of still think it's very much favored in Milosh's position right now, simply because he's going to be again taking off that Luminion off the board, taking out a big attacker from Edwin's side, and will be going ahead in prizes.
Yeah, no, totally. I completely agree. And not only this, but, as we said earlier, all of those double turbos are now gone for Edwin. That's not going to be a resource available to him going into his next turns.
No, and it's a little bit less useful now, but I guess with the Primal Turbos, being able to attach as many, well, I say as many energies, those 4 energies as a max, those singular energies in comparison to the DTEs that would be available should he not have been able to, not have to have discarded them, for example. Does mean he's still okay for the time being, but there will be a point, again, it's all about that resource management of all those energies. I'm just thinking Edwin may be just kicking himself a little bit just from not attaching in one of those turns before he mined them away.
Resource management so important in Lugia, but so important in the mirror as well. As we said, utilizing those single prizes comes at a cost. You're going to be having to save the energy to attack with these single prizes eventually. So we see here the double turbo, obviously not ideal having to retreat the Yveltal, but using another for the Radiant Charizards to be able to attack. But now moving forward, like I said, he'll be having very limited resources going into the later turns.
Yeah, definitely. We do see Milosh go for the Dunsparce play and plays it down onto the bench, that mysterious nest, activating for both sides of the board. So it works for your own colorless Pokemon, but your opponents as well, where they now all do not have any weakness. So there will be no way for Edwin to retaliate onto that Lugia on the bench with a lightning type and really sort of take it out in quick succession really easily. Milosh does send up the Archeops as a bit of a jump into following the Aqua return from the Luminion there. So let's just see how Edwin's able to deal with this right now. Of course, he is still 1 prize down. That Lugia on the bench is going to be really difficult to take out. Yeah,
so we see here opting to sacrifice the Archeops. This is like the previous game that we saw Milosh play. He's recognizing that, I can take this game, see it to the end with only 1 Primal Turbo. This ability is fantastic, but I only realistically need to use 1 here. And these are the little micro decisions that, really affect the game state and your ability to see out the game in the later turns.
Yeah, exactly that. Milosh is going to identify, just with 3 prizes left, it's a minimum of 2 more attacks before he's able to take game 2 and potentially push himself into that final. But it could be free as well. So if Edwin has to keep pushing up maybe some single prizes, causing a bit more of an awkward scenario, that's where the energies may come into effect and just cause a couple more problems here. But Edwin looks like he's eyeing up that Stoutland Fee, being able to use that amazing attack to potentially draw an additional prize. And there's 1 Pokemon on Milosh's side, which is just a little bit susceptible to that.
Ooh, well, there's 2. There's 2 options for Edwin with the Manaphy and the Dunsparce. Double dip Fangs, obviously taking 1 more prize if he knocks out a basic. But, of course, only 30 damage. Let's be 40 damage. Sorry, let's be realistic. Of course, with this attack, it does have to be low, but of course, coupled up with powerful energy, that damage can soon ramp up.
Yeah, exactly that. And I guess I was just identifying that Dunsparce a little bit more because it was 60 HP, if I'm not mistaken. So it's just the 1 powerful energy that's required. The Manaphy requiring that extra powerful, should it have needed to take the additional 2 prizes. Does boss up the Dunsparce there as well. So again, huge play from Edwin. Able to jump over the price race now, potentially putting himself in a really good spot because now those Lugias once again are susceptible to some form of lightning attacker.
Yeah, this definitely puts Edwin ahead of the prize race, surprisingly. So, using that Stoutland play, more ingenious, really. Seeing that, that Dunsparce come onto the board has really taken trumps for Edwin here.
Yeah, and what's really vital here, he gets the double choice belts off his prizes.
Look at his face.
So I feel like that's a little thank you to the heavens there, because that's exactly what he needs. Because he does, of course, still have his own Raikou in his deck as well. And if this Lugia does take the knockout onto this Stoutland, he is able to retaliate with a strong, powerful lightning attacker.
So this just comes down to resources, right? You know, we know that the speed energy is in the bin. We know that Aurora energy has been prized. So, you know, it goes back to do you have enough resources to both retreat and to be able to use that attack from Raikou as well?
Yeah, it's, let's just see exactly how those resources have been used, because with Milosh's side, he does play the 2-speed energy because he does have that additional lightning attacker in that Vikavolt. But whereas Edwin only has that one, and if we said we've seen it already, hit the discard, he only has access then to the Aurora energy. So maybe it's not a play that's currently viable. Because maybe that's why he looked to the heavens as well, because he does have one more Aurora in the prizes at the same time, but hits double choice belt instead. Maybe he needed one of each to be able to kind of close this out, as we see Milosh there just kind of playing out his turns, playing out his turns with all of those powerful energies, ready to kind of swing at anything that comes its way.
Yeah, he's got the power for sure. And he's going to be able to take the knockout on that Stoutland and take 2 prizes. And, you know, this is going to be a real nail-biter now.
Although there is that Luminium V on the bench now as well. Still looking like it could be an option to, to take the final 2 prizes. Because Milosh here will have to... Oh, here we go.
Opting for the boss.
Looks like he bosses up the Archeops, so just limiting what's available.
So this means Edwin only really needs boss powerful, right?
I believe so.
On the mana fee.
Well, at the same time, you can also just, with one energy,
just
you can
knock
use
out the Luminion as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's definitely an out, using Wild Tackle for 200, because there's no detrimental attack, but there's also the energies there for the powerful energy. So does Edwin have boss in hand?
Oh, that's a knockout on the Lugia.
Oh, there you go. With just that, he had so many different options available to him then, because all of those powerfuls weren't used at all. And Edwin takes game 2 of our semi-final and bringing it back to 1-1.
What a game. What a game.
It is completely swinging all the way in full circle right now. Edwin not wanting to let go of his unbeaten record as it currently stands. Remember, he is currently still 12 wins and I think 3 ties throughout this tournament so far. He's not letting that go.
No, of course not. No, and we'll be going into game 3, and these players must be realizing, one of them is going into the final, obviously, and it's for Milosh, he's gone into 2 game 3s now in a row, one in top 8, one in top 4. He's going to be thinking, I just have to get over this hurdle. I have to get to the final. I have to do it.
No, he does have that slight advantage. He is going first into game 3. Still plenty of time on the clock as it stands right now, from what I saw as well. So he's going to go into it with hopefully a positive mindset that, he's going first. He's going to have the first chance to get the Lugia down and start targeting whatever Edwin does on his side of the board. So at this current moment in time, of course, there's a lot of brain power being used right now. It's very tiring. He's been playing for 2 days. Both players have been playing for 2 days worth of Pokemon. Maybe Edwin a little bit less, because he has had the chance to ID a couple of rounds and have a bit of a break. But both players, true testament to their abilities to have to go through the mental strength of all these games as well, as we now see both players setting up for our final game in semi-finals to see whether Milosh is able to take his Vikavolt Lugia list into the finals, or Edwin will continue his undefeated streak.
And what a story for both players. What a story. Taking a Lugia Vikavolt to regionals isn't something you really hear of, obviously. It's been a surprise to all of us in this regionals. But for Edwin, like we said, it's building that story arc. He's a newer player, and what an achievement he's going to be making today, regardless of the result. Yeah,
Milosh as well, having performed so well. I believe he got top 8 in the regionals in Warsaw as well. So really sort of doing himself proud as we go into this game 3 right now. And we obviously have seen it's a double. It's a mirror start with Milosh starting and Edwin starting with the amazing Rare Raikou there as well. So both players maybe starting to think about that mana fee in their decks. Milosh going for that capture energy there, looking ideally, of course, for that Lugia, just to begin trying to work out and set up that summoning star ability in the turn 2.
Yeah, and this is such an advantage for Milosh, because if he's able to take out the Raikou early as possible, on turn 2, that eliminates such a big threat. if he's able to, get the Archeops in the bin, do the normal Lugia stuff, the sequence well, and get aggressive, this could be such an advantage.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, there's plenty of time on the clock. There's 23 minutes plus over right now to go. So it's very likely that this will be able to find a completion between both players as well. Both players will be working as hard as possible to try and, put themselves into that final. But Miloš has the advantage.
Ooh, just a pass.
Not much else other than the Lugia down, but at the same time, sometimes that's more than enough.
Yeah, sometimes they like to bide their time, these Lugia players. But
or you have a hand like that.
That's natural. It's natural. It's natural for Edwin.
It just comes to me.
Play the cards in front of you. It's not his fault.
Yeah. Play with whatever you've been dealt, okay?
Exactly. That's the game we play.
But double discard of the Archeops. Turn 1 with that Ultra Ball. Incredible, just action to see from a Lugia player. Never want to see it across the table from you. So Miloš might be a little bit just on edge right now because he hasn't seen maybe an Archeops as of yet or hasn't been able to discard one as of yet. But, Edwin's just double-checking his prizes now. We'll have another quick look as well. Edwin's side does not necessarily have anything that's going to hold him back in this matchup as it currently stands. Miloš has a couple of those Marnies there and his one-off Choice Belt, which could come in a little bit clutch, depending on which techs come out onto the board state. That Dunsparce, the Manaphy's, etc. But, yeah, let's see how Edwin's going to play this out.
If he's able to get the Marnie with a Lugia V on board and disrupt Miloš enough to where he can't navigate his way around an effective summoning start, this game just is on a tipping edge. It just goes straight into Edwin's favor.
I mean, you've seen it from the game that you casted with Shay a little bit earlier as well. Both players almost at a bit of a standpoint purely because they weren't able to necessarily get the Lugia V-Star out early or quickly enough. There's another crowd noise there. But we do see the Lugia V hit the bench, which is great for Edwin right now. Does get the attachment of the Aurora as well. There's a third Archeops going out. Oof. And a research discarding that Lugia V-Star does play the 3 copies, so feels comfortable enough to discard it.
And this is why, maybe he's in top 4. Well, it is why he's in top 4. He's playing these consistent lists, 3 V-Star against, some players now playing 2, and playing the 4 copies of Archeops. Play to your outs. Play to your outs. If your game plan is getting Archeops in the bin, play the 4 Ultra Ball, play the 4 Quick Ball, and that's how this Lugia list has developed over time.
Yeah, exactly that. He does only get the 1 Lugia V on the board. However, that's a little bit scary. But, he's staring down at Miloš's turn 1, which obviously didn't happen. Not much had happened. But Miloš is already sort of kick-started now with an Evo Incense. So maybe he top-decked it. Now able to kind of find or begin looking through the deck for those Archeops pieces. Couldn't quite see exactly what he picked out. Does have quite a few cards in his hand. Does attach the Aurora energy to the active Raikou. Of course, discarding a card as well. So that might be a way to kind of get rid of one of the Archeops he might have just grabbed from the Evo Incense. And now it's down to Miloš. How can he play out the rest of this turn to truly impact this so that he can, take the victory in this semi-final?
A fantastic and advantageous turn here would be, or the ideal turn would be to boss up the opposite Lugia, knock out the Lugia and the Raikou. It's a lot to ask. It's a lot to ask.
That's ideal world,
It's an ideal world, right? Heart of the cards sort of stuff. But, those are sort of the plays that he'll be looking for. But of course, it is only a second turn. He hasn't gone through much of his deck, so that might not be an option for him. But, attacking with the Raikou in any case and softening up the Lugia would put him to such an advantage because not only is he taking a threat on board, he's getting ahead on the prize race, and also, like I said, softening up that Lugia for a knockout.
Yeah, exactly that. And we do have the research there coming down from Miloš. So his turn is still going. He did have a good supporter, of course, that means. But, of course, with turn 1, he's not able to play it nice and early. Does look like he plays an Ultra Ball, so we'll be getting that Lugia V-Star there.
Yep.
Did he get double Archeops into the discard is my next question, because that's vital.
He's
He
going
does,
for the Summoning Star.
he turns it over, he gets double Archeops down, so he's going to be, you know, causing a lot of problems for Edwin right now, because again, he's gone first, he's got that ability off, and he's going to be softening up that Lugia, as you said.
A lot of headaches for Edwin now. Of course, Miloš would rather be taking 2 prizes with the Raikou, as there is the main reason why they put it in the deck. Now, it's interesting now because with the Lugia softening up, it does open a lot of plays for Miloš to be able to attack a Lugia V-Star with, say, an Archeops, something that, you know, doesn't hit the exact HP numbers of the Lugia V-Star, but now that it's softened up, those plays are now an option to him.
Yeah, exactly that. And Edwin, unfortunately, has to be in a little bit of a sticky situation because he has his own amazing rare Raikou in the active slot, which will be knocked out. That could have been another way to kind of claw himself back into the game.
Yeah, for sure.
Simply because Miloš doesn't have the mana feed down this time. He has had to have a full board of single prizes that isn't the mana feed, and 2 of them have less than 120 HP. So that means it could have just gone down the route of maybe return KOing with his own Raikou, but Sod's Law, he did start it at the same time, and we do see that amazing shot knockout on the active Raikou and the 120 damage onto the Lugia V on Edwin's bench.
Yeah, and of course you wouldn't really want to be putting it onto the Luminion because, of course, when you attack with it, you're going to be having the option to shuffle the Pokemon back into deck, and that's exactly what we've seen multiple times these past couple of days. That's exactly how you utilize good bench space. And as we see Edwin here, just going through the deck, checking out his options here. He will be having 120, of course, on that Lugia V, and it's going to be such. He's going to be evolving the Lugia V-Star into that 120 HP Lugia V, and we see here the Summoning Star.
Yeah, so with a remaining of 160 HP, I believe is right,
Yep,
280 minus 120. There's a few cards that can deal that damage quite easily. Even that Archeops with 2 powerful energies will be able to sort of deal that sort of damage, as we see the Summoning Star ability from Edwin's side of the board with the double Archeops now. Likely to go to the active so that he has enough damage or sort of attack power to knock out the Raikou with the Luminion. But we'll also be trying to find a way to find a Pokemon that allows him to maybe pivot into. He doesn't really want to pivot into an Archeops now. It's too early.
Yep.
So he doesn't really want to, almost waste an Archeops' ability or value that he could gain from it, from the energy acceleration. We'll be looking for another Pokemon that he could potentially bounce into that might be a bit trickier to be knocked out. So there's the Oranguru from the capture energy. So it looks like that's probably the best option for Edwin right now.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be sacrificing an Archeops too early. We've seen these plays by Miloš being played perfectly, sacrificing Archeops at the right time. Set up enough of a board so where you go, I'm strong enough to take this game out here. I'm strong enough to see it out. I've set up enough. And that's exactly what we see possibly from Edwin here, Aqua returning and then promoting the Oranguru.
Ooh, there comes down the amazing rare Yveltal as well, that amazing destruction attack. And there's some disruption from Edwin's side of the board, just to kind of, put Miloš on a bit of a back foot. But, with the board set up as it is, it doesn't always work to the same effect if there weren't any Archeops on the board, for example. So let's just see how Edwin can draw through this, and Miloš is able to continue this as well. We are sort of anticipating the Aqua return into the Oranguru, but there comes another Evo Incense just to kind of thin out the deck, make sure he increases those percentages as much as possible.
Yeah, and in an ideal world for both players, Miloš is ahead of the prize race. So, in an ideal world for him, he's going to be taking the win just due to prize race. Now, it's interesting to see how Edwin will navigate around that and try and prevent Miloš from running the game. He's going to be shuffling back in that Luminion, promoting a single prizer, and he's going to be hoping for Miloš to promote that Lugia and maybe taking a knockout on that to put him back into the prize race.
Yeah, and there's the Aqua return into the Oranguru. 120 HP that Oranguru has to be able to try and take a hit where possible, does protect Aluminium V and all those energies attached to it, of course. But Milosh is still staring down at that very weakened Lugia V-Star on the bench, as well as that Archeops is promoted to the active spot here. So let's just see how Milosh is able to maybe continue putting this matchup in his favor, continuing on from the start of this game where he went first.
Yeah, no, for sure. This is then when, again, we mentioned the single prize, matchup. Utilizing all of the single prizes that you have in the deck. We see the Radiant Charizard already benched. He's going to be starting to look to bring out the Yveltal, to bring out the, not the Raikou anymore, but using maybe the Archeops to attack, like we see here, attaching the powerful energy. Maybe he's going to start doing that.
Yeah, and here we go with Milosh actually identifying that even that Zapdos is capable of using Electro Ball for 2 lightning and 1 color. So another single prize attacker that will deal more than enough damage onto that Lugia V-Star on the bench to KO it due to the weakness, unless Edwin's able to find the Dunsparce at some stage if this Archeops isn't, well, it looks like it's going to be targeting down this Oranguru at its current moment in time. Which is why I'm questioning why 3 energies are currently on it. So it looks like it's potentially attacking with this. Just for everyone at home as well, you've probably already seen the ticker at the bottom, but Hermione playing that Gudra V-Star list has locked himself into the final. So we do know one of our competitors who will be locking horns with one of these two here for a chance to be regional champion of Bochum Regional.
Yeah, we do have to go through this game first, of course. The excitement never stops on this stream, of course. But, good to see the goo sacrifice. Good to see the goo coming trumps in putting itself into the final.
Yeah, overcoming that Arceus Duraludon, which we saw 2 into top 8. Obviously, they both had to face one another, which is always a bit of a shame and a bit of, just a shootout. At that stage, but congratulations Hermione to make it into the final, and we're just going to see the conclusion of this matchup soon. Under 12 minutes on the clock, and we'll see which Lugia will be in the finals to face this Gudra.
Yeah, and we see here, you mentioned the Zapdos doing 110, of course. It will be able to take a knockout on either the Archeops or the Lugia, but hitting just the right numbers for the Yveltal as well.
Yeah, exactly that. So here we are. We do see that Oranguru knocked out by that Arceus' Speed Wing. Edwin just kind of considering his options now. He wants to try and use, surely, that Yveltal to KO that the opposing Lugia V-Star on Milosh's side, because that's the biggest threat in terms of HP and difficulty in trying to take something out, but that amazing destruction can do so just like that. And there's the Primal Turbo being used right now. It does eye up a DTE and an Aurora Energy, just counting what's available to him. Does need all 3 of those, and just double checking it is available. So those 2 Primal Turbos will be available to Edwin to try and swing this back in his favor. Double Primal Turbo there. There's the 2 Auroras already on the Yveltal. One more as alongside the DTE, I think, or maybe just the Heat Energy as an option. No, it does need the DT.
Yeah, so it does need the DT
and the Aurora,
opting to save the Heat Energy for the Radiant Charizard later on.
Of course.
But, if he doesn't have Boss here, he's going to be using all of those resources, like we said before, on just the Archeops.
Yes.
We know that Milosh has to deal with the Yveltal as well, so the resources are definitely gone. And, there's no option to get them back for Edwin, of course, being special energy.
And I'm a man of value, so you don't really want to be wasting those energies.
I definitely
We've said it so many times. Just trying to get as much value out of these 5 energy costs attackers. You want to be taking 2 prizes this turn.
No, definitely. And like you said, it's all about value here. Using those 5 resources might be, Edwin might be seeing that this is the, this is like a micro decision.
Oh, and there it is. That's the Marnie instead. Just looks like, I guess the only other thing to consider at this moment in time, if Edwin is able to KO this Archeops, which of course he is able to, there's just the 1 Archeops on Milosh's side, and there's no energy right now for him to use an additional either pivot or additional attacker. Just taking 1 prize still limits that Radiant Charizard's ability to reduce the attack costs. So this could be a little bit of an awkward spot as well. Of course, still has access to maybe DTEs to kind of increase that. But let's see how Milosh is able to sort of make this play and take it forward.
I would say Milosh is definitely in quite an awkward position with only one Primal Turbo available to him. It's going to make that resource management even harder in terms of retreating. But we know that he does have attackers set up on board. He has the Lugia, he has the Zapdos, he has also the Lugia. But he's opting to not use the Zapdos this turn, opting to maybe use the Radiant Charizard to take the knockout on the Yveltal. And of course, it's going to be asking the question to Edwin, can you match me here? Can you knock out my Charizard as well? And this is where these sort of single prize matchups start to take place in the Lugia Mirror.
Yeah, exactly that. And that's the key thing here for Milosh, to just try and understand which direction he's going in. Does have that Radiant Charizard in the active spot now. Has activated that Primal Turbo as he's just kind of applying that Aurora energy and the DTE with his big attacker in the active spot as well. Of course, doesn't have the heat energy, so it's not increasing the HP, the 160 HP that it currently has. Yeah, exactly that. So, it does have susceptible to be attacked by another one of those single prizes. Milosh is probably still eyeing up that Lugia V-Star at some stage, but he can save that for a later turn. He doesn't need it right now. As we do also see Milosh just attach the DT onto...
Oh, he's going for the Lugia. He's not going for the Yveltal. Interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, again, I think because of the situation that he's in, it's still a perfectly fine play as well. Taking the two prizes now means Milosh is 2 attacks away from winning this game. It does mean Edwin could also retaliate onto the Lugia, but then the Charizard will step up once again, and then there's no way of really kind of jumping over that hurdle, per se.
Yeah, like you said, the prize trade is still there for him in terms of the Lugia being on the field. The Yveltal still is active now, of course. Coming into the active, as you can imagine, whether he goes for a boss play on the Lugia or the Charizard, it's still... There's no option here for Edwin to get ahead of the prize race.
No, and that's the sticky situation here for Edwin. Can he get a Pokemon that's available to maybe tank a hit where possible? Does he have access to more powerful energies? I can't quite sure, not quite sure right now how many is available. Maybe that's another way of using the Stoutland to somehow overstretch to something like the Oranguru, 120 HP, or the Zapdos, the same sort of thing, 110 HP. Does need all 4 powerful energies at that point, though. So it's a really difficult situation for Edwin.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how this lines up now for Edwin. We see him put the Stoutland to the front of the deck, so maybe that was an option that to him, like you said. And I think he actually just put it in hand.
Oh, with the quick ball, does put it into his hand, so he's just double checking what is available again. Managing the resources of your opponent as well as his own, sorry. I think both players have asked to see each other's discards a number of times now because, like I said, it's such a resource-heavy deck because of those finite number of energies that are available to both players. Yeah,
no, for sure. And let's think about Milosh's board state here. He has his attackers ready. He has 1 Primal Turbo, and again, it goes back to the argument of, I'm going to be using my Archeops to attack here. I just need 1 to see out the game. Really good stuff from Milosh here and perfect sequencing. Yeah,
let's just see how Edwin will cope with this turn right now. He's still just kind of trying to analyze how he can his route to victory, if there still is one, because he's 2 prizes behind. Does have boss in hand now as well, so does just target the V-Star, maybe to put it back on level footing for the time being. Does have 2 powerful energies in hand, which makes it really awkward because he doesn't want to bench the Stoutland and attach one now.
No, but he is going to have to start maybe benching and attaching to it.
Yeah, exactly. That might be the case of just having to kind of... That might just be the play, but he chooses to take out the Archeops.
In a perfectly good play. Now the Zapdos isn't as live as it was. It requires 2 lightning and a colorless to be able to use that Electro Ball attack. So, I don't think I can see Milosh using that attack in this game anymore. But of course, the problem for Edwin was that, regardless of what threat you go for with the amazing destruction attack, you're still not getting rid of some of the other threats that he has on board, i.e. the Radiant Charizard and the Lugia. He's only on 2 prizes, so only 2 more attacks that are needed from him.
Yeah, and I guess it's just Milosh was able to get the energy attachments onto that Lugia initially as well, that DT, that sort of attachment from hand actually being super vital. Because he only needs, he's already attached now heat energy to the Lugia, just needs that 1 energy. Doesn't need the Archeops anymore. He's 2 attacks away from joining Hermione in the final. Whereas Edwin is just stuck at some loose ends right now in terms of just figuring out some sort of line that he can make and play for. The Oranguru there just being used to swap the card to the top of the deck. Milosh just needs to find a way just to close this out. There's the attack. There's Combustion Blast. Of course, able to attack again because it has been moved to the bench and forward once again. Now just 1 prize away from joining Hermione and facing Gudra in the final, as Edwin just tries to find a way or anything that he can do to just stop Milosh's powering through his deck.
And great play by Milosh, of course, preparing for this as well by attaching the DT to Charizard. It means that he will be able to retreat manually as well into the Lugia to be able to attack and take the last prize.
Yeah, and this is, I'm starting to feel like I'm a little bit concerned for Edwin's forward state right now. Does, of course, still have the energy acceleration that's available. Does have that Lugia there as well, but no Pokemon, if Milosh still has an energy in hand, or is able to get an energy in hand, really will be able to survive an attack. It's dealing 250 damage right now, the same as that Charizard. So what is big enough to really kind of stop that from happening?
No, yeah, of course, and the Lugia on the bench as well. Such an ominous threat as well to Edwin, and able to take a knockout as well with the choice belt attached on the Lugia V as well.
Yeah, unless Edwin does have access maybe to...
Oh yeah, we do see the V-Guard energy.
Yeah, the V-Guard energy that's already been attached to the Lugia does have maybe a lost vacuum to try and stop that choice belt really coming into action. But of course, Milosh is then just still a boss away if he's able to get this Lugia and the lost vacuum into play right now. So again, it's always just such a tricky situation. He does do the manual retreat into his Lugia V, using that opportunity to use that Aero Dive with all those powerful energies on it.
And the key thing about this now as well, which is an ingenious play, is attaching the V-Guard energy means that the Lugia V won't be able to take the knockout here unless Milosh is able to find a couple of powerful energy, but of course without any Archeops he won't be able to do that.
Yeah, that DT, sorry, I did almost forget, reducing the damage that's available for that Tempest Dive. But there's the Ultra Ball. Do we see something like a Luminion into a boss play right now to really close out this game? Is that available to him? I don't really know. He just puts a card down. There's Luminion, and I think this is the writing on the wall.
Boss,
Edwin will be very unlikely to win at this point. I can't see the boss. I just want to confirm it at this stage. All we just want to see is it being played out. There's the boss. Edwin, despite being undefeated this whole time, does fall to Milosh, and who is our winner in a semi-final, and locks himself in to a matchup against the Gudra.
Yeah, what a matchup we have in front of us as well. The Lugia Vika Vault against the Hisuian Gudra. Who would have thought that would have been the matchup of our finals? With all the Mew, with all the Lost Boxes, we can see doing a little jig here for our stream. Going back to it, Lugia Vika Vault, Gudra V-Star in our final. Who would have thought it?
Yeah, and there he is. There is our other competitor in this final for the Bochum Regionals of 2023. He's done so well to get to this stage. I know we've played on it a lot about that Lugia Vikavolt list. It is just a 1 copy, but of course there's certain cards that are tailored for it, like that Zapdos is in there for that reason as well. He's got the additional speed energy in there at the same time to kind of just help the draw engine of the deck. But it's paid dividends. We saw it earlier yesterday, maybe today, where he was able to use that Vikavolt to just lock out his opponent before sort of setting up his own board and then just powering through. We've started to see it here in top 4, maybe even top 8 as well, where he was just a Lugia deck.
Yeah.
And just, Lugia doing Lugia things has just been able to power its way through to the finals, and now is going to be facing another incredible deck with another incredible engine, really.
No, yeah, and it goes back to deck diversity. It goes back to that again. I love to talk about it, but it's all about these personal preferences. These players are not in the final for no reason. They've tested so well, and their decks are as efficient as possible, and that's why they're in the final.
Yeah, and it's like testament to him, testament to Hermione, who I don't believe we've had on the stream yet either. It'd be fantastic to showcase the Gudra on the final stage. Both of these players will be playing it out for a massive amount of championship points, the prize money that's on the line, the one thing you can hold over everyone else to be called a regional champion. But credit to Edwin as well. It's such a shame that we've had to bring him on and unfortunately show that he did lose a round eventually. Like you said, it's no mean feat to go 9-0 and then undefeated in day 2.
It's the first game he's lost in the 2 days.
That's it. And it's such a shame. But again, congratulations to him. A top 4 finish is fantastic as well. But that's it for our semi-final. I've been Alex. This is Rab here. We're just going to jump straight to a break and shortly be bringing you our regional final.